Welcome to the Korea Pro podcast. I'm your host, Jeongmin Kim, the editorial director of Korea Pro.
And I'm John Lee, the editor of Korea Pro.
Join us for a weekly 15-minute conversation as we dive into the most pressing stories shaping South Korea and dissect the most complicated ones for you.
From politics to culture, technology to society, we've got you covered. So stay ahead of the curve and never be sidelined again.
So get ready for a fresh perspective on South Korea's news. This is the Korea Pro podcast.
All right, listeners, welcome back to the Korea Pro podcast. We are recording this on Friday, July 5th, slightly before noon. And we have had a lot of developing stories regarding finance and economics this week. And so we've got a lot to discuss.
Right, let's start with this very interesting report that I was actually really looking forward to from Bank of Korea. They did like an assessment of what's going to happen and what the risk might be when the baby boomers retire.
Well, specifically, it's the second generation of baby boomers. And
can you quickly define what baby boomers mean in South Korea?
Well, here in the second generation baby boomers, the BOK defines them as people who were born between 1964 and 1974. And so these people are now retiring. And this is a significant group because this is the largest demographic group in the country, about 18%. And so what the BOK estimates is that once this group starts to retire year after year, they are estimated that assuming that the labor market remains the same for everyone else, South Korea is going to experience economic decline by 0.38% every year. And that's the first scenario. Now, they have had two other scenarios ready. The second one was if South Korea starts to incentivize businesses to hire more older workers, then the number will go down a little bit. And the third
is that
one
significantly lower?
Slightly. The worst case scenario was 0.38%. If these soft sorts of incentivization programs go, it'll be 0.22. But if the South Korean government decides to go with a really hard sort of policy, like actually formally raising the retirement age, then there will still be an economic decline, but it'll be about 0.14% each year.
When they were estimating these numbers for the three different scenarios, did they calculate in the declining fertility rate as well?
They did not specifically cite the fertility rates here because I saw the briefing and in the briefing they added the mathematics and what kind of a formula that they used, but this is only for the numbers of people who are retiring.
Okay.
They did not factor into the birth rate because that would just be another factor.
Right. If you factor in, also this is not like exactly clear what it's going to look like in 20 years, right? If they factor in worst case scenarios on declining birth rate as well, the economically active group of people, it's going to decline a lot.
It will decline, but of course we also have to caveat this because we cannot know the future. This formula, this projection is based on a specific set of assumptions that we are making right now. Maybe there will be more immigration in the future, maybe it will not change, but that cannot be factored in. Regarding just these numbers, we are only looking at these specific facts only.
So they weren't factoring in immigration issues either?
Well, it would be impossible to have a calculation if we decided to factor in all other possible things that could happen.
Right. Okay, and at the same time, South Korea touts strong growth economically, although indicators did show persistent manufacturing struggles and financial stability concerns. What's going on here?
Well, that's the thing. On Wednesday, the cabinet had this meeting, and President Yoon was there, of course. But the most interesting thing was the Prime Minister. Han Duck-soo was basically blowing smoke up the president's ass. I'm not sure if I can actually say that word, but I'm going to say it anyway. The Prime Minister was saying that the economy is on a healthy projected growth, 2.6%. This is not the South Korean government saying it. This is the OECD saying it. And so these numbers look good. And also South Korea recorded record employment numbers at the beginning of this year in January. The numbers
was unexpected.
The numbers have gone down a little bit since January, but this was under Yoon's term. And so they were saying, hey, look at the employment numbers, look at the growth projection rate. And the Prime Minister was saying the worst is behind us. When we inherited this economy from the Moon Jae-in administration, things were looking terrible, but now finally things are looking up.
Okay, so it's already politicized sort of framing.
Yes, but the Prime Minister was only looking at these only two indicators that are going up.
Right, other indicators show something else.
something very different. If you look at the business sentiment index, that's gone down by 10 points. If you look at the amount of foreign currency reserve that South Korea has, that's gone down too. And that's because South Korea is playing this currency game right now. Now, the big issue regarding the Korean won is that it has depreciated against the dollar significantly over the past few months. And you would think that would be beneficial for exporters, not so much for importers, but it would be beneficial for exporters. But the problem is the Japanese yen depreciated even more. And so, because the Japanese yen has depreciated more and South Korea and Japan competes a lot on the same high-end exports, South Korean exporters haven't been able to capitalize on this. And so that's why the business index has been going down. The cost of imports have been going up, and foreign reserves have been going down because the BOK, the Bank of Korea, and the National Pension Fund have been increasing their limits on how much they're going to do foreign currency swaps. There are many indicators that are showing long-term vulnerabilities here.
Were these indicators mentioned at all during the cabinet meeting?
No.
No. Okay. Just coming back to the manufacturing sector for a second, the BSI, the Business Sentiment Index, I assume, is this the same one with the one where they surveyed over 2,000 manufacturing
Yes,
companies?
it is by the Korean Chamber of Commerce.
Right. So they particularly attributed this pessimism to high interest rates and rising costs, which has been an issue for almost a year now.
Now, the Prime Minister did say, now this was his exact phrase, that interest rates have nowhere else to go but down. And part of this is from projections that the Federal Reserve in the U.S. is going to reduce the interest rates. And so that's what the Prime Minister said. And so once the Fed interest rates go down, yes, business investments might go up a little bit more because it'll be cheaper to take out loans. But again, we need to take a look at all of these other indicators that are pointing in a different direction than what the Prime Minister was saying.
And lastly, in econ and finance related news, actually business related news, South Korea also, I think it was the same day or the next day, they announced comprehensive aid plan for small businesses.
It was the previous day.
Right. Is this small and medium companies, but including startups, or?
I'm not sure if the word startups was specifically mentioned.
Was it 중소기업 or 중견기업?
Micro businesses.
Micro businesses.
So small businesses, people who are self-employed. So the finance ministry made this announcement that they're going to have an almost $30 billion financial aid plan. Now, what the president was saying when he gave this speech was that he was very snidely commenting on Lee Jae-myung's proposal to give 250,000 won to each South Korean citizen. He was saying, "Oh, this his plan will cause inflation. Mine will not." And to be fair, he is a bit right on that because this $30 billion financial aid plan is not giving direct money to small businesses. They're mostly going to be used for debt restructuring. So, for example, they're going to be used...
So more long-term.
Yeah. So, one of the proposed plans was to extend small businesses' ability to repay their loans by up to 5 years. But this will cost money. And that's why it's going to be costing about $30 billion. But at the same time, Lee Jae-myung's plan, if it had actually gone through, well, this is at least what Lee Jae-myung is saying, that his plan would have cost $9.5 billion. So the government's plan right now costs way more money than what the opposition was proposing.
But to be fair, for longer term improvements for the economy.
Well, but that's the thing. This is a band-aid caused by what the government is already doing. We just talked about all of these currency games that the South Korean government is doing.
Other issues as
because
well.
of this financial currency swap, the Korean won is not depreciating as much as it could. And because it's not depreciating all that much, South Korean small businesses who are also exporting, they can't compete with Japan. They don't have the competitive edge. And because of this currency swap that is already going on, and that's why the small businesses are suffering, now the government's saying, oh, they're suffering, so now we need to have more spending in this way to help these small businesses. And so there's a lot of trying to put on a Band-Aid on a Band-Aid on a Band-Aid sort of thing going on here.
So it's sort of like choosing between two ad hoc measures and trying to figure out what's better.
That's pretty much it.
Okay. Next topic, Sleepless in Seoul. This was the top story of the week. It was a feature story To be frank, at first I thought this was something that Koreans are just very, very used to. I didn't know that this many readers will be interested to read about this, but it was a very interesting story. What was the angle?
Now, the angle was this was written by a new contributor. His name is Rui Valdez, and he wrote about how a lot of South Korean children, teenagers and even preteens, are drinking coffee and high caffeinated energy drinks in order to stay up to remain competitive in schools so that they can do well in their exams.
This is actually a sign of how prevalent this is. I was surprised to read that many readers were surprised to hear about this.
Exactly. You and
Because
I
I was so used to it.
Yeah, you went through the South Korean education
I
system.
have my fourth coffee of this morning and right in front of me.
Mm-hmm. And, I was also working in the education sector before coming here.
Me too.
And so because of everything that we've seen and personally experienced in our lives, this was nothing new to us. And so, when I first saw the story, I thought it was going to be, all right, this is going to be one of those stories where we can publish, but it will not gain all that much attention because everyone knows this. But
We were wrong.
we were wrong.
And I'm happy to be proven wrong because this story actually it links to on the surface different things. One is about coffee consumption, one is about academic pressure.
And also it's about the economy as well.
Yeah.
People have rightfully pointed out that economic opportunities are not nearly as great as they used to be. Things are getting more and more competitive. And so, children are already being programmed since they are very young that you have to do well in school.
I think the most frequent response that I've seen to this story was that all those coffee risking mental and physical health for what? What's left in the economy for them to
Especially when the economy is going to decline by 0.3% every year.
Exactly. And just to share my own anecdote, I went to a boarding school in high school. So I saw that many readers were surprised to see this first anecdote in the lead where Yejin, a high school student, says that her daily routine is wake up at 6:30, go to school right after school, cram school until 8 p.m., and then study cafe, go home at midnight, and usually sleep 5 hours a day. 5 hours is considered good enough. Usually.
And how much did this trigger your own personal memories?
A lot. The irony in here is that I couldn't sleep this after reading this that exact night because I relived the trauma. I didn't even know it was a trauma, but I remembered all those boarding school days where I woke up at 6. We went to a 운동장. What's the 운동장?
The track.
The tracks, did like a very military style roll call, and then we did like a forced sort of weird dances to wake ourselves up, and took our vocabulary cards to breakfast so that we don't talk to each other during breakfast. But
gotta memorize
those words. And then after it's different time at the time. So after cram school, it wasn't study cafe, which is kind of nice, but we were forced to stay in school until midnight. So when we get back to the dorm, it's like 12:30, and then most of us would go downstairs
and then study some more.
Yeah, study until like 3 a.m.
Right.
So that was considered like norm to me. So it was surprising to see that people were surprised to read about this.
This entire country needs therapy so badly.
I know so badly.
In South Korea's fast-paced professional environment, staying informed is key to success. With a Korea Pro subscription, you get access to daily email newsletters, expert briefings, and exclusive events that help you stay ahead. As a podcast listener, you can now try Korea Pro for free and subscribe at a discounted rate if you like what we're doing. Visit koreapro.org/podcast to subscribe and get everything you need to stay on top in South Korea. Korea Pro, never be sidelined again.
Week ahead, the Chinese ambassador, one of the most controversial ambassadors in South Korea, Shin Hae-myung, is leaving.
He has had quite a colorful time here in Korea. Now, granted, he's been a diplomat for a long time, and he's been invested in South Korea-China relations. He's fluent in Korean. Well, he does speak with a heavy Chinese accent, but he speaks Korean fluently. He knows the language. But he's made a lot of remarks during his time here that has not really caused a lot of love between South Korean officials and the Chinese embassy.
Well, some politicians like him more than others.
Some more than others. Lee Jae-myung met with him personally. But that's the thing. When he met with Lee Jae-myung last year, I think it was sometime in March or April. I don't remember the exact month. But that was when Shin Hai-ming went to the meeting with a prepared note. And he gave that speech in Korean that you should not bet on China's defeat, which was in reference to Yoon's foreign policy of aligning more closely with the U.S. and Japan. And so that caused a lot of a word you like to use, kerfuffle, especially among the ruling party that was saying at the time that this is an example of interference in domestic affairs.
Which China keeps saying they hate.
Which they hate. And for a brief amount of time, there was some calls to brand him as persona non grata, to
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, so that was a really big event. And I think after that, the ambassador just really cut down his public appearances as much as he could.
Right, but after he leaves, is there any appointments that we're seeing in news right now?
Well, at the moment, there has been no formal announcement from Beijing as to whom they will appoint to replace him as the next ambassador. But we do have someone in the Chinese embassy right now. I forget his exact title, but his name
Minister
is
Counselor.
Minister Counselor, thank you. And he will be serving as a charge d'affaires until there will be a formal announcement of a new ambassador.
All right, let's keep an eye on that. And lastly, actually, the biggest news in South Korea domestically was the combats in the parliament. And the biggest one of all is still the special investigation bill regarding the marine staff.
This was proposed in the last assembly. It was vetoed. They tried to they tried to defeat the veto. They failed. And now with the 22nd assembly, they're doing it again.
And apparently the presidential office last night commented that the initial bill about the special investigation they already didn't like because it was unconstitutional. But then they did amend a few, but then added more what presidential office sees as unconstitutional. So it's like a big back and forth between the presidential office and the DP right now.
It's in Korean, like we'd like to say, kisam, right?
Yeah.
A war of wills.
Yes. And because of this combative, sort of hostile sentiment all over the parliament right now, the National Assembly was scheduled to do like an opening ceremony today where past precedents show that presidents often go to attend and celebrate it together.
Sure.
But
not so much this time.
Yeah, last night or the day before yesterday, the floor leader of PPP asked presidential office for the president not to come, and now they are boycotting the opening ceremony altogether. So the DP actually postponed it, which means that it's highly possible that the National Assembly will do the opening ceremony. Might be the latest ever since the new constitution was in 1980s.
Okie dokie. So things are going swimmingly.
Yeah. And to know more about how things are going swimmingly, please subscribe. And the week ahead newsletter will be in your inbox by 2 p.m. on Monday. And that's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in.
If you want to know more, sign up for our daily executive briefings. We brief you on all you need to know from the past 24 hours and why they matter every morning in your inboxes.
Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast for your weekly dose of insight. And until next time, I'm Jeongmin Kim.
And I'm John Lee. Stay connected, stay informed, and we'll see you next time on the Korea Pro Podcast.